Boo, what it do, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be checking out Jordan Peterson and his best comebacks. Huge fan of Jordan Peterson. Love his views on feminism and all of that because he's very empirical. Not that much of a fan of his views on religion and Christianity, but I respect this man. I've been following him for years, so let's check it out.
I want to go talk to Peterson. Peterson, do you have any comments on the Nazi presence at your protest?
Oh, come on.
The presence of Nazis and white supremacists assaulting people at your protest. Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, I don't like Nazis.
And I'm sure, I would hope that if I were a student of Dr. Peterson, that he would refer to me as she and wouldn't have a problem with that.
So this is a trans woman,
but at the end of the day, a personal pronoun preference still is a preference for what language other people use. And at the end of the day, I don't have ultimate control over what Dr. Peterson, what the language he chooses to use, or anybody else for that matter.
No one has control.
Okay, let me find out then.
Say.
Let me find out. If she were a student of yours, what would you call her?
She.
You would. Okay. We've established that.
Why should your right to freedom of speech trump a trans person's right not to be offended?
What the
Because in order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive. I mean, look at the conversation we're having right now.
Exactly.
Like you're certainly willing to risk offending me in the pursuit of truth. Why should you have the right to do that? It's been rather uncomfortable.
Well, I'm very glad I put you on the spot.
Well,
I'm very glad that I have exercised my freedom of speech.
You get my point. It's like you're doing what you should do, which is digging a bit to see what the hell's going on.
So
and that is what you should do. But you're exercising your freedom of speech to certainly risk offending me. And that's fine. I think more power to you as far as I'm concerned.
So you haven't sat there and...
Yes, exactly.
I'm just trying to work that out.
Shut up. Shut up.
Ha, gotcha.
You have got me. You have got me. I'm trying to work that through in my head.
And there's not a secular...
So this is a huge point, right? And this is only in Western culture where, things have blown way out of proportion. Like he said, why does my freedom of speech fall below your own personal feelings? Now, on a personal level, yes, we respect people. We don't want to feel uncomfortable around people, but that does not mean you have a right. And people feel so entitled nowadays. Like, imagine if, look, I used to be, pretty good looking when I was younger, but I know now that I'm older, I've lost my peak physique, and I can't go around forcing people to call me a bloody stud when I'm not. And if they don't call me a stud, am I going to get offended? Should the law then come in and say, look, you can't say that? It's this whole LGBTQ proverb monopoly almost. It's just absolutely crazy.
Humanist organization.
Philosopher Beyonce knows said that it has been said that racism is so American that if you challenge racism, you look like you're challenging America. We are challenging inequality. We are challenging the refusal to see me as an individual. When we overcome that, have at it, we're all on equal plane.
I think it's fine. I think it's good.
We're not all equal.
So I've got a couple of questions.
So let's your side spoke, so I'm going to go to Jordan, then to you,
Let's
Michelle.
assume for a moment that I've benefited from my white privilege. Okay, so let's assume that. That's fine.
Assumption.
That's what you would say. So, so let's say, here, let's get precise about this, okay?
Was that very individual of you?
Let's get precise about this, okay?
Let's get precise.
To what degree is my present level of attainment or achievement a consequence of my white privilege? And I don't mean sort of. I mean, do you mean 5%? Do you mean 15%?
This is what I love about Jordan Peterson.
Do you mean 25%? Do you mean 75%? And what do you propose I do about it? How about a tax? How about a tax that's like specialized for me so that I can account for my damn privilege, so that I can stop hearing about it? Now, let's get precise about one other thing, okay? We'll get precise about one other thing.
Precise?
Yeah, precise, yes. And so, if if we can agree, and we haven't, that the left can go too far, which it clearly can, then how
Obviously.
would my worthy opponents precisely define when the left that they stand for has gone too far? You didn't like equity, equality of outcome. I think that's a great marker. But if you have a better suggestion and won't sidestep the question, so let's figure out how I can dispense with my white privilege, and so that you can tell me when the left has gone too far, since they clearly can. And that's what this debate is about political correctness. It's about the left going too far. And I think it's gone too far in many ways. And I'd like to figure out exactly how and when, so the reasonable left could make its ascendance again and we could quit all this nonsense.
When you talk about,
Okay, listen. So I do 100% agree with this white privilege thing, right? I think that this is misconstrued in many ways because what I would concede white privilege to be is if, for example, if you're white or whatever class you are, specifically for white privilege, if you're white, you get a universal basic income and the rest don't, right? This is white privilege. So I'm in Malaysia. We are an Islamic state, I guess, but privilege is when a Malay and Islamic person buys property, they get 20% off just because they are Malay or they are Islamic. Right? So this is an example of privilege that the government puts against you. In America, it seems like they're angry that the people on top, the people that set the rules, are predominantly white. But here's the thing though. They are the ruling class. Let's be straight with it. They are the people that cleared off the Native Americans. They are the European settlers that came in. They are the people that brought in the black slaves. So essentially, they are the class that built up the country. So as much as you want to make that fair, which is great and it should be done, the blinding fact is that they had many years head start, a couple hundred years. My mic is 400 plus, so I'd say maybe 200 years, a 200-year head start, 300-year head start on the rest of the people. Now, what do we do about that? Do we confiscate generational wealth? How about the benefits they've brought to society? Right? So a lot of these things are really, really hard, and this is why democracy, I feel like, is way overstated, right? I'm not saying, be Kim Jong-un, that's bad as well, but you have the Democrats against the Republicans, you have the whites against the blacks, you have the poor against the rich. The entire society is fractured, and that is, by any standard of social economy, unproductive.
Feminizing men, it almost sounds derogatory. It's almost as if you're saying that to be feminine or to express any sort of femininity is actually inferior to masculinity. And I think that is a huge problem even within the language that we use. When you say, don't be such a girl, don't be such a pussy, the greatest insults that men can give each other tend to have feminine origins, like, as I said, pussy or faggot or anything like that. And I think, again, that speaks to a very systematic inequality between the genders.
And you attributed the rates of mental illness among men to their inability to express, say, sentimental emotions. And I don't think there's a shred of clinical evidence to support that stance.
No.
I don't think there's a shred of evidence to support that stance. The kind of violence, for example, that Lawrence is discussing is a consequence of competitive violence among young men.
I think there is some evidence that men find it difficult to talk about things, and that
and they also
ways in which you can help young men to talk about things.
And that's the evidence for the differential rates of mental health suffering.
I also don't think when you're talking about things being so innate. Judith Butler would have said that, gender is a construct, that gender is a performance.
Judith Butler doesn't know what she's talking about in the least, so I don't accept that.
That's interesting, but
she's no scientist, she doesn't know the psychological literature.
And this is all under the influence.
Look, feminizing men is not you calling a male guy a pussy or stop being such a bitch. That's not feminizing men. Okay, the essential core, in my opinion, what feminizing men is disrupting evolutionary and biological gender roles that are set onto us as a species, right? The reason why we use "you're such a bitch" as a derogatory term is not because we're making fun of females. It's because to be a man, it means to provide, to take care, all from the caveman days. Can you imagine if you were more like a girl against a saber-toothed tiger? Right? That does not make sense. The reason why feminizing masculinity is so dangerous is because our species work well because of the synergy between male and female. If the males become more like females, we then have only females, and therefore the synergy no longer works as well. And this is the reason why feminizing masculinity is so toxic in so many ways. And it's not just degrading terms, it is budging, it is disrupting the fundamental workings of our species. And this is my problem with it.
You accept this oppression narrative without question. 120
I
years ago...
I don't accept anything without question. I'm just telling you a fact.
That's not a fact.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Women were expected to stay home and take care of the kids and cook a meal.
That's not
Women didn't have reliable birth control until 1960. Don't you think that played a role? Don't you think the fact that they didn't have reliable care for
Are you
their
blaming
menstrual
women
cycles,
for not being allowed to lead countries, to lead nations? Because they didn't
They were allowed to lead nations. There were queens in many countries.
Exactly.
I think you have no idea how much this oppression narrative has saturated your thinking.
Why do you think it is that so much of what you...
Listen, the issue with female leadership, it's not about oppression, right? It is about the difference between the male and female construct that has been the case all through time. Okay? And I'm saying this in the most respectful of ways because, again, we all know that women are more emotional and emotions do not contribute favorably to decision making, for example. Women are more susceptible to stress, which doesn't, again, contribute positively to decision making. Women also have the need, the desire to procreate, to do the most noble job of our species, and that is to give birth, to conceive babies. And when men are leaders, they are willing to give their lives. Women can't do that because they are giving their lives to the next generation of men, right? The most powerful man on earth, right? The most respect that he will have for is his mother. Okay? It is not to say that men should be respected more and therefore they are leaders. No, men are more suited for the job. They are able to bring, I guess, on average, more benefits in terms of decision making, slightly more competence, right? All through history, right? There are monarchs, but I mean, the queen and all that, fine, right? But a major majority, we have kings, we have sultans, we have khans, who are all male, and that's not because of kind of any, how to say, it's not an oppressive movement against females. It is just the natural way that things are done. It has always been through our species, and I'm all for the emancipation of women. I'm all for equal opportunities, but it does not mean that women want to, that women should, that be forced against their natural being to take up a position of leadership. They can if they want, but again, that's not the majority. That will never be. That is going against the biological need. And you can say, yes, a woman can be a leader and can be a parent as well. But then you compare yourself, a mother who has to take care of the kids, who has to spend 9 months in labor and a year after that to heal, versus a man that can live his life. That can give his life to contributing to the society. There is no comparison. I'm sorry, that went way too long.
Say is so very popular with the alt-right.
It isn't. And you don't have any evidence for that at all. Any more than the evidence that alt-right people watch this show.
Neo-Nite website, Saviour of Western Civilization.
Oh, well, that was all taken apart today by a number of Jewish publications, by the way, showing that, first of all, that was all satirical commentary on the part of the alt-right, directed at taking me down, for example. And there was an alt-right article yesterday published saying that I was a Jewish stooge and shill. So this is absolute nonsense, and I don't appeal primarily to the alt-right. There's no evidence for that at all. It's the proclivity of.
I love that everything he talks about evidence. Except when he talks about religion.
I think that you get the reaction that you do from the alt-right. Looking at the Cathy Newman documentary.
What reaction?
Interview.
There's 10 million people watched that and commented on it.
I'm talking about what I saw, and I'm curious to know what your reaction was to the glee with which the alt-right seized upon that interview.
I don't accept.
Should we deal with the death threats? I mean, she had, I think, a dozen.
I don't accept the concept that it was the alt-right that was doing this. There were 10 million people who commented on that video, and about 95% of them commented negatively on Cathy Newman's behavior. You think there's 10 million alt-right trolls watching that?
I see very little of the pursuit of justice characterizing the modern university. I see a tremendous amount of the pursuit of vengeance for things that don't even deserve to have vengeance extracted for them.
So give me an example of what doesn't deserve vengeance.
How about the existence of the patriarchy?
But you don't mean now that women have not suffered injustices. In Britain, Virginia Woolf couldn't go to university, or rather she couldn't get a degree. Women have been excluded in all kinds of ways from social situations, have they not?
Yes, but people have been excluded from social situations in all kinds of ways. And I don't like the narrative, the social historical injustice narrative as a way of looking at the world. The way that young people now are taught about the relationships between men and women throughout history is that the fundamental narrative is that men oppressed women throughout the course of history. And then that kind of came to an end when everybody woke up in 1964.
No. Exactly. That's what I was on my rant.
I don't know what it's like in Canadian universities, but that's what I call, and forgive this European reference, that's a kind of Punch and Judy way of seeing it. That is not how universities as a whole operate.
Well, that's how they operate in Canada. We had the biggest scandal in Canadian university history last year when a graduate student was hauled in front of a Maoist inquisition for daring to show a 5-minute video of me discussing issues like this on public television. The universities are in far worse shape. Maybe they're not in such bad shape in the UK as they are in North America, but they're in plenty bad shape in North America.
Forgive me, and I'm sorry you were involved, but that is not the biggest scandal. The biggest scandal will be the number, for instance, of suicides that are prevalent amongst undergraduates. The fact that one academic was hauled up, in my view, inappropriately for doing what was done is not the biggest scandal. You're inflating
It's
things.
not the biggest tragedy. The suicides are a bigger tragedy, but it was certainly the biggest scandal. Canadian universities don't make international news.
Your background, it's pretty earthy. But how did you connect that with your current political perspective?
Before we do that, can you imagine, right, being an academic, you spend, well, to get a PhD, you probably need 6 years, right? You spend 6 years of your life, well, you spend your entire life, and then 6 years from university, master's, PhD, you probably have at least 500,000 in student loans. And then you finally, you spend your life contributing to society, writing articles, ushering the next generation, into the real world. And then, just because someone is offended by what you say, which is most of the time the truth, or they don't like I don't know, the pronouns you use or the things that you say, and then poop, that's it, you're done. What kind of message? Like, you know, we've come to a point where we are glorifying the jesters and shitting on the academics. Like, this is such a strange time in human history. I don't know, man.
Perspective. What you said that you became disillusioned with socialism.
I became disillusioned with ideology.
With ideology in general.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's certainly not something that's changed. I mean, I don't like ideologues.
But he's now.
If you don't have a
so he didn't like ideologues, but now he's suddenly come to grasp with his Christianity after his illnesses and all that. But you know, maybe we'll do another video on his views on religion, which are pretty interesting because of, again, his high IQ, his eloquence. You know, he managed just to debate his religious standpoint from a historical perspective, and you know, it's a really interesting look if any one of you are interested. But yeah, like, comment and subscribe below. I've said a lot of I have had a lot of brave opinions in this video, so you know, have a chat with me in the comments, like, subscribe, and yeah, I'll catch y'all later. Peace.